Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to Jenna and Debbie for being here. So I'm not totally sure what qualifies me to be on the stage with you two, but I'll give a bit of a background. I'm mostly interested in the way that business can address social issues. So I spent a while at an organization called Acumen Fund, which essentially invested in businesses that serve the poor. And now I work for a global coalition of philanthropists, Nigerian and Indian and American, all focused on using business to save mothers and babies around the world. So that's what I do. And I'm with this fabulous group here. So you guys probably have their bios, but I'll do a quick overview so we know who they are. Jenna Arnold, besides being in a great group with me called Dot to Dot, is the co-founder of ORGANIZE, which is a nonprofit leveraging technology, open data, and behavioral economics to increase the amount of organ donors in the US. And we'll hear a little bit more about her background and interests. And then we have Debbie Sterling, who's the founder and CEO of Goldieblox, which is an award-winning toy company on a mission to disrupt the pink aisle with interactive construction toys and stories for girls. Okay, so clearly I didn't need to read the bio now. So we're just going to have a conversation about kind of how they built these organizations, why they built them, and looking forward to it. So, I think first let's start with the why. What sort of, you guys could do anything you wanted. You could make a ton of money, you could go into banking, you could be consulting. Like, what really drove you to sort of start these organizations, and why was such a sort of a purpose-driven model? So, Jenna, do you want to start?
Sure. Because I had no other choice. I think this whole concept of why is obviously very much encouraging people to find their passion and their purpose, which I think is one of our biggest human challenges, right? To figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing, and then how you can actually apply it to make your life, your community's life, your country's life, the world's life better. But when I've been throughout my career, whether or not it was at the UN or when I was creating content for MTV or things along those lines, when I came across a story or an obstacle that I thought I might be able to improve, I had a responsibility to do that. I think we all happen to have responsibilities as citizens, whether it's building brilliant companies that are empowering young girls or trying to solve the organ donation crisis. So my why is because I don't really have any other choice.
Yeah. And are you in it for the money at all?
Oh, there's loads of money in nonprofit. I'm sure all of you guys know.
Debbie.
My story is a little bit similar. I was always hoping and being told you're supposed to just find your passion, and once you found your passion, you just do your passion and you're happy. But what if you don't know what your passion is? I studied engineering at Stanford, and there were very few women, and it always bothered me, but it wasn't until years later. I had a very circuitous career path. I was trying out all kinds of things, and I didn't know what this passion was. And I finally, 7 years later, started this group called Idea Brunch, where I get my friends together once every couple of months. We would cook breakfast, and each person would get up and share their latest idea for a company or an art project or whatever. And in that idea brunch, my friend Christy, who was a fellow engineer, said, why are there so few women in engineering? I grew up playing with my older brother's hand-me-down construction toys, and that's what got me interested in it. Why are those boys' toys? Why do girls play with dolls and boys build? And maybe that has something to do with the lack of women in the field. And the moment she said that, it was like just fireworks went off, lightning bulb. I just was sitting there, and I realized, oh my God, I know this is my passion. And ever since that day, every morning when I woke up, it was all I could think about. It was like not even a choice. It was what I felt like I was born to do. It took a really long time to get there, but once it happened, it didn't feel like a choice.
Yeah. And so you're for-profit.
Yes.
So why did you choose to be a for-profit?
Because there's no money in nonprofits.
But you don't want to make money, that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. During my circuitous career path, one stop along the way, I actually did volunteer work in rural India with a nonprofit. And I was thinking, this will probably be my passion. I want to help people. And in working in nonprofit, me personally, I felt a little bit boxed in because I'm somebody who has really creative, disruptive ideas. And when you're a nonprofit and you're relying on certain funders, there's a certain expectation to do things. I didn't fit into nonprofit at all. So when I was forming my company, it made more sense for me and my personality to run it in a for-profit manner.
Great. And maybe we can go back to this a little bit when we talk about sort of the how and how you guys built your companies, but back to a little bit more about you and sort of the why. When we were earlier discussing in the green room, sort of what are, as you approach this, let's say you have the idea, but there may be a lot of fears associated with sort of stepping into building a career like this or being an entrepreneur. Tell me a little bit about getting over some of those fears or some of those fears that you faced as you led up to this.
There's always the question about whether or not you're doing something correctly, right? Every single day, am I applying the time that I have in the right way, in the most productive way? Should I be taking this meeting? Should I be spending time answering emails? Whatever it might be. So you're consistently struggling with that. So forgive yourself that that's a consistent conversation you're having. But one of the biggest fears that I'm currently facing right now with Organize, and just a little bit of a quick additional context, is we're looking to solve the organ donation crisis in the US by increasing the places that people can register, because right now you can only register at the DMV. And in addition to that, there's 52 different registries in the US that don't speak to each other. So if you're registered in one state and you pass away in another, you're not registered in that state. It's a total cluster beep. Anyway, so we're building a single registry and we're increasing the places people can register, but consequently, we are challenging the establishment. And the establishment isn't just big companies, which is equally scary because they have a lot of money that they could be throwing at to challenge you. But in our case, we're challenging the government, and we're challenging the federal and state governments, and we're challenging people and systems and bureaucracies that have been in place for decades, and that can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
And at times, I'm concerned that I am going to get burnt out in the process.
Yeah.
But every single time there's like a big, huge step forward, there's a little bit of a step back, and so that whole pendulum and that consistent cycle is a fear of mine that I'm not going to be able to keep up with.
Yeah. And Debbie, what about you on the fear factor?
Yeah. So. Well, I remember one of the biggest fears at the beginning was just starting out. When I came up with the idea for Goldieblox, I knew it was what I wanted to do with my life. But at the time, I had a pretty consistent, regular paycheck job. I had a pretty cush job. And I had grown up my whole life, come from a middle-class family, and I started I remember I started working when I was probably 12, babysitting, and then Boys and Girls Club. I worked at the Gap. Like, I've always had a job.
Right.
And so to leave a job and start a new job, but when you're an entrepreneur,
yeah.
It felt really scary to not be actually doing a job and getting a regular paycheck. And so what I did was, once I came up with the idea and I knew I was obsessed, I started saving every penny that I could for about 6 months. And in all of my spare time, I was doing research and working on it with the hope that I could save enough money that I could spend a year working on Goldieblox. And I just said to myself, if it does, I'm going to do it for a year, see what happens, try my best. And if at the end of the year it doesn't work out, then I'll just go get another job. And I won't be homeless on the street or anything. You can always go get another job. But I saved up enough that I could try. So that was one of and then once I saved up the money, the next fear is what if I screw up? Yeah. What if it doesn't take off? And I know this is my passion and I'm giving it my all, and what if I'm not good enough? And then I got over that fear by just rationalizing, well, am I ever going to be embarrassed or feel ashamed for trying to impact the lives of little girls? I'll never feel ashamed for at least trying.
Yeah.
Can I just add something? One of the things you mentioned, which I'm a firm believer of, is this idea of no regrets. And if you think you have an idea that might have some legs or could benefit somebody, you don't want in 5 years from now to look back and be like, oh, gosh, I totally wish I tried. This idea of just trying. I apply this no regrets policy to dating to jobs to like text the guy back, kiss him, like just no regrets. But I think that's a really, really valuable thing because everyone is scared, but you should jump in and just try it.
Yeah, and this, I mean, you spoke a little bit about, you spent 6 months and you saved money. What other like support mechanism, because I think this is a real reality. I mean, there's a lot of push right now in entrepreneur, go be an entrepreneur, take the risk, go do it. And it's like, well, I wasn't born or raised with money, and so I have to figure it out. And maybe I don't have other people around me who are entrepreneurs. But like, what other support systems did you put in place to be able to?
Cell phone bills are expensive. I'm like consistently shocked by my monthly cell phone bill. But yeah, that's exactly right. You have to pay that. I'm blessed to come from a very big family, and I think for me, one of the things that helps me sleep better at night is that oftentimes I can close my eyes and think, well, if this concept fails, or if any of my other companies fail, there's so many couches that I can sleep on. But like, no matter what, I can think of a bunch of people whose couches I can crash on.
Yeah.
I think it's going to things like this. I remember when I first started out and I'd quit the job and I'm in my apartment alone prototyping toys. Many moments I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I was all by myself and I was really lonely. I was like the hermit inventor. And I was too afraid to show anybody or share my ideas and get feedback because, too afraid that someone would steal the idea. And I finally had a turning point where I went to an event similar to this, but it was an event for social entrepreneurs. And there were 100 young people there who want to change the world. And each of us had to get up in front of the whole room and give our pitch, our 2-minute pitch for our big idea. And it was the first time I'd ever actually publicly shared my idea that I had been hermiting by myself on for months. And I was afraid to share it, and I almost wanted to pass out an NDA for everyone to sign. and everyone's like, that's ridiculous. Just get up, tell the idea. No one's going to steal your idea. So I went up, pitched the idea, and the room just exploded. And it was the first time that I realized that I was really onto something. And afterward, there was a line out the door of all of these people who wanted to help. And suddenly, right after that day, I had these interns and volunteers showing up at my apartment, just all constantly. Yeah. And I suddenly had this community and this support network. And I completely shifted my mindset, and I started sharing my idea with anyone who would listen, whoever, the poor person sitting next to me on the airplane, the waiter, and it's so funny, the more you start talking about it, you never know who's gonna know somebody who could help you. And when you're proud of it and passionate about it, it really comes through, and people start to, help you succeed. It's really the only way to succeed in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And can you just get, for the audience who may not know your products, can you give us an example of one of your products?
Sure. I'll talk about, so the concept of Goldieblox is we're trying to get little girls interested in engineering and technology from a young age. And we have created this line of construction toys, but the way that it appeals to girls, what I've found through research is girls really like stories and characters. So instead of an instruction manual, it's stories of Goldie, the girl builder, and she solves problems by building machines. Mm-hmm. We found that it really helps get girls engaged. So one new product that we just launched is actually the Goldie action figure. And she, instead of a doll, dolls are about fashion and Goldie is about action. And she comes with a 13-foot zip line that you build, and she can fly across the room.
That's awesome. That's so fun. I wish I had that. I had a lot of Barbies.
That's so
embarrassingly cool. Very cool. Very cool. So let's shift a little bit to sort of the how and how you started these organizations. And one of the things I was very curious about as I was sort of reading about both of your stories and what you built is there are many different ways to create change. And I think there's this sort of age-old question of, do you create change inside the system, or are you sort of the disruptor outside the system? And this, actually, I think this panel was called the Disruptors. So, but I would be very curious, was that sort of a conscious thought that you went into with this idea, and how is that sort of played out? And I would just maybe like to have a little, a riff on that of how you think about that in your own models. But Jenna, if you want to start.
Yeah. It was. It was because the term disruptor is very much, in the conversation about any social entrepreneur today. And when we started Organize about a year ago, it was obviously part of our language in general. But we have very much intentionally stayed out of the traditional sandbox because we knew we could be more nimble. We knew we could iterate and fail and iterate, hopefully succeed more quickly if we stayed far from the establishment. We've also tried to not have a tremendous amount of conversations with press or huge partners, because when we're doing that, that means our heads aren't down focused on what it is that we should be executing. So we want to stay small for now, so that we can really make sure that we are entering the space through the right doorway, and also say small because it will force us to partner in the future. But no, it's very much intentionally, we have built ourselves intentionally outside of this space, because we know also if we screw up, we can just dissolve into the background and we won't be affecting the foundation of what already exists and is semi-working. So yes,
but when you have to sign up for the DMV, it's a big system government play. So do you feel like you can have enough of an impact if you're not working with those players?
Yeah, because what we're doing, how much do I reveal?
You should reveal everything.
Right. What we're doing is we are just going through the back door of places and saying, hey, we're not trying to rebuild the system that's going to require a tremendous amount of laws and policy to be changed and years and years and years of legislation. We're just building a better piece of technology that you can use to get more people in your state registered. Or, oh, hey, telling people not to take their organs to heaven doesn't really market to all the different demographics that you need to. Do you guys know what a hashtag is? Things like that we're just suggesting we're coming in with better strategies to implement into an existing system versus trying to rebuild it.
Great.
For us as well, we are going from the outside, mainly because when I first started, I went to the toy store to get a lay of the land. And that's when I felt like I was in the twilight zone, like I was back in the 1950s, and all the toys for girls were ironing boards and pop stars, and I just realized that this is the way big toy companies market to girls. And when I went to the toy fair to kind of talk about my idea and get feedback, all the toy industry veterans kind of shook their heads and said, this will never sell, there's no market for this, girls play with dolls, boys like building, that's just nature. You can't fight nature. And that really pissed me off. So, very much went from outside the system because I felt like the system was behind the times.
Yeah.
And I felt like they didn't actually understand what the modern consumer wants and really what girls need to be successful in the future economy. So I used Kickstarter as a way to get the idea out. And really that wasn't possible 10 years ago. You couldn't really do that. But by going up on Kickstarter and just making this video, the thing went huge. And in the video, I showed myself sneaking through the aisles of Toys R Us, holding a picture of Goldieblox next to Barbie. And I snuck in, totally wasn't allowed at all. And on the last day of our Kickstarter campaign, Toys R Us called, and I thought, oh no, we're going to be in trouble. And they said, we want to meet with you. And so we flew down to New Jersey to meet with Toys R Us, and they're like, what is this video? You're making us look like jerks. And we want to carry your product. So, just 6 months after this Kickstarter, suddenly we're on the shelves nationwide of Toys R Us, and we got there. And it was really great. The buyer was like, yeah, I've got daughters, I get it. So, it was really, really validating. And, I think maybe some of those big toy companies are starting to take notice. I hope so. Because, I think girls deserve better toys and characters and, more empowering things to play with.
Yeah. So let's, you mentioned the Kickstarter, but let's talk about some of the tools. So you had the idea, both of you, and in particular social media, because I think that what's so amazing is that, if we take this sort of system structure is that you can scale so quickly outside the system, right? Whereas 20 years ago you couldn't do that because of social media. So what are some of the tools that you deployed to get yourself moving, to grow the business, to get the company going?
So one of the things that we're doing, increasing the places people can register, we're doing it online, right? We're doing it through Facebook, we're doing it through Seamless Web, we're doing it when you're buying a pair of shoes on Zappos. All of those APIs, they didn't exist, 3, 4, definitely not longer than that ago. So fortunately, in our scenario, there's a lot of products out there that all we have to do is just plug into whatever it is that we're doing. So that's allowing us to scale and scale quickly. And then, of course, there's also just coming up with really cool campaigns and making sure that you're sculpting the narrative in the right way. And we can test it easily and very cheaply. And if we need to tweak it, we can do it very quickly as well.
Yeah. Right.
For us, it's also been pretty scrappy, but we've been really shining a light on the issue to kind of bring it to people's attention and make them realize, the pink aisle and why we want to disrupt it. And so, we started with Kickstarter, which was a great way. Once we got into Toys R Us, we were like, oh no, how is anyone going to find out about it? We don't have massive advertising budgets. So we actually got a bunch of our early Kickstarter customers to come meet us in a Toys R Us parking lot. We had about 30 kids, and we wanted to film them running through the aisles of Toys R Us. And we weren't able to get permission, so we're in the parking lot, and we were trying to pretend like we were a Girl Scout troop, like on a field trip to Toys R Us. And the Toys R Us manager came out, and he's like, what are you guys doing here? And we're like, oh, we're with the, girls group just on our field trip. And he's like, stay there, I'll be right back. He runs inside, I'm like, oh no, the security guards are circling. I'm like, oh no, we're totally gonna get busted. And they come out with Jeffrey the giraffe, and they're handing out like gifts to everybody, like welcoming us on the loudspeaker. And we shot this video of these girls kind of ransacking through Toys R Us, and it went viral. And right after that, the toys started moving there, and it was very scrappy. We just did it ourselves, but we were, just pretty rebellious and just doing whatever we could to, make a splash and get the word out.
That's great. So we're going to take some questions.
For Debra. Hi, Jenna. Obviously, all the stats have come out with Google and Apple lately, and the low numbers in engineering jobs for women, and there's all this corporate investment, investing in, Girls Who Code is a great organization, and investing in nonprofits that are trying to get more young girls into the tech STEM education pipeline. Are you seeing now, and Gina Davis, of course, has her organization around, reaching young kids, 13 and under, and getting more female lead empowerment models, role models in that young content. And are you seeing, as a toy manufacturer, corporations coming to you, corporate sponsorships dollars coming your way? Because it's really a huge booming topic right now, which is getting young girls to care about technology and engineering, computer science.
Yeah, that's a great question. The exciting thing is that there is so much momentum now in getting girls and minorities interested in STEM, and it's happening all over the place. The Obama administration has been really promoting it, and big tech companies, or Google did their Made with Code initiative, and we're kind of in touch with all of them, and they're excited about what we're doing, and they've all just said, how can we help? Probably our biggest boost from that initiative was our partnership with Intuit. They ran a contest for one small business getting to have a free commercial in the Super Bowl, and we applied, and so did 15,000 other small businesses. But we ended up winning, and we actually had a free commercial in the Super Bowl this past February.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Wow. Other questions? Yeah, please.
I had a question to the two of you about structuring a business where it's a nonprofit and a profit, and your thoughts on that, because I'm getting ready to do that.
Sure, I can actually speak to that. Organize is a hybrid, even though right now our current status is a C3. If you were going to do it, I would highly recommend starting off as a for-profit LLC or C Corp, and then ultimately building out a foundation, so to speak, which would be the C3. We're doing it the opposite way, which is just an incredible headache. I'm a big fan of hybrids. I also am very committed to proving that you can do well and do good. So right now we're a C3, so that all the governments and all the hospitals play with us, but at some point we'll be releasing our hybrid model. Do it.
Did you want to jump in, or?
We started as a C Corp, and now we're looking into creating a nonprofit 501c3 arm afterward. Maybe that was the right way to do it. I don't know, because I haven't done it any other way. The reason why we're now starting the 501c3 arm is that we have so many opportunities coming in of collaboration and big corporations who want to support what we're doing. And there are a lot of initiatives that we want to do that we can't really afford to do with the for-profit, because we're a startup and just trying to grow as quickly as we can. So that's why we're now kind of doing both.
Yeah.
But there's also something to look into, would be a B Corp.
Yeah.
And also just make sure you're like hyper clear what your revenue model is before you do anything.
Yeah, and the B Corp is a benefit corporation, which essentially allows you to value your stakeholders as much as your shareholders, not as much, but more than your shareholders, because if you're a C Corp, you automatically have to respond to your shareholders over your stakeholders, which doesn't give you as much flexibility around sort of social change. But great, do we have time for another question?
My name is Urangela Watson, and I remember the first person who asked the question was talking about girls who code and how minorities and girls aren't involved in like the tech world or coding or whatnot. And I was personally, like this summer, I was part of that program at Goldman Sachs, and it was like a wonderful event, and I plan on like broadening that aspect at my school. So is there any advice that you have for girls like me who are both girls and minorities that you might tell us, or any scrappy events that you might want us to start up ourselves?
I would just say stick with it. I remember when I first got into engineering, I was pretty intimidated, and it still is a male-dominated field. It really is. It's getting better. It'll only get better if girls like us stay in it, but don't let them make you feel stupid. If you don't understand something, don't be embarrassed to ask. I don't know how you learn, but I'm a very collaborative learner. And a lot of times I found some of my classmates in the engineering program were more kind of loners. So find people who you can collaborate with. You don't have to do it on your own. And really just, it's hard for everybody. It's going to be challenging. But when you stick with it and you tackle that challenge and you don't give up, you will feel invincible, and you'll have so much confidence that you'll know that you can do anything.
Just to elaborate, every question has an answer. You just have to figure out what it is, and sometimes it'll take you 1 minute, and sometimes it'll take you an hour, a week, or a month, but just keep plowing until you find it. And just take baby steps. To me, it's always like, okay, well, now we need to shoot a video. Okay, great. How are we shooting a video? Where do we need, who's our target demographic? I mean, just baby steps. You'll figure it out. None of this is rocket science.
And if you do stay with it, I guarantee so many doors will open for you.
Yeah. Great. Can we make one more question?
I'm a high school counselor, and your toys came a little bit too late for my high school students. What are the things that you can do to help us to motivate the students between 9th and 12th grade? Because I have a lot of students that are good in math, in calculus and everything, but when I ask them what their future career goals are, they want to go into business, they want to go into law, which is good, but I always ask them, you can be an engineer and at the same time be a lawyer too. So are there things that you can do? Because I was thinking maybe I should start a club in my school for Guess Who Code, or using your organization. What are the things you can do to help me?
That's a great question. So one thing, this little self-serving, but I gave a TEDx talk, and
I watched it. It was very good.
And that's one thing that you could potentially show your students, because I don't look like what they picture an engineer looks like. And hearing my story, and then potentially other stories of other TED Talks or other kind of women in engineering or people in engineering who are really interesting and exciting who they might not expect. That would be one thing I would consider doing. Girls Who Code is a really great organization. Another one that I would recommend looking into is called Iridescent, and they do this program called the Technovation Challenge, where they have high school students work together on teams to create and design and build mobile apps. And they have this, I think it's a phenomenal program. And after this, I can give you my card. I've got a bunch. And actually, Goldieblox on our Facebook page, we share a lot of this kind of stuff. So you can follow our page, because we're always trying to share resources. People are asking us that stuff all the time.
Great. And I would imagine that you're not the only person asking that question. So it seems like whatever you do, maybe there's a business around it where you create an online platform where others can then gain that information.
And
but no, I mean, there's
Code
probably a question
Academy
a lot of
too
people
is
are
really
asking.
great.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's all we have time for, but you guys are fabulous. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And to we.